Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of GTF, Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia, and before we get started, I want to let all the barflies know that this Saturday, we're having a little get-together.
Guys, this is Nikki. I'm here at King's, just calling everyone to come join us on November 5th.
That's right. It's this Saturday at King's Entertainment. A number of barroom show hosts will be there. It is at 5505 Park Place in Rosemont, Illinois. It's from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. There's bowling, there's booze, there's tons of TV screens. So hopefully you can join us and buy me a drink. So many of the barroom show hosts will be there. I know one person, unfortunately, who's not going to be there, and that is the star of this show, Gabriel. Greg, come on in here. How are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing good, although I got to tell you that last week we did a show and you said, we're not going to trade anybody. And then Robert Quinn is traded. And then you tweeted out, I don't foresee any more trades. What's happened? Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn are both gone. We've got a lot to talk about. Your thoughts?
I totally get the Quinn trade. He's 32 years old. He's making a lot of money. You can get a quality draft pick in return. And based on the amount of money he's making and his age, chances are he would have been released at the end of this season anyway, and wouldn't be back next year as they want to get younger moving forward. So I got that one. But then after the trade, Ryan Poles, comes out and said, I'm totally aware of what this does to the locker room, especially, when you trade guys that are very, very revered, for lack of a better word, within the locker room situation. And he turns around, he trades Roquan yesterday, who, like Quinn, is a big part of that locker room culture. They're well-liked, they're well-respected, they're leaders. Quinn, more of a silent leader, leads by example. Roquan really a little bit more vocal, but still more example-type leader, leading tackler in the league. But again, I get it. If it was me, the way was brought up in the league, I don't think I would have done it. I don't know if you saw it yesterday. I had a little Twitter chat conversation with Dan Pompei, and Dan Pompei was against the trade, and we all respect Dan. He's a Hall of Fame writer, and then I tweeted above it, quoted the tweet and said this, and I said, this is the way I was brought up in the league, and he responds with, draft, develop, reward. And again, this is a guy who was a top 8 pick in the draft in 2018, yet they're sending him out the door. Now, people say, well, you don't pay off the ball linebackers that kind of money. I disagree with that, especially within this scheme. The will linebacker is the most important player on the damn defense. If you're not going to pay him, who the hell are you going to pay? So for that point, and then there's guys, you look up some of the contracts. Okay, Leonard in Indianapolis is making a lot of money. Warner in San Francisco is making a lot of money. And then I looked because I didn't know what his contractual situation was. I wanted to see if he was going to be like a free agent at the end of this year. Matt Milano from Buffalo, who's their will linebacker and a great linebacker. Well, they just restructured him going into this season, and it comes out to an average, and I just looked at it quick. I might be off by a couple dollars, somewhere in the $14-15 million range. So don't tell me you don't pay good players at that position, because they do.
But the reality of the situation is that the Bears have chosen not to pay Roquan Smith. How much do you think that the animosity that brewed between Roquan Smith and Ryan Poles during that contract negotiation had to do with moving this player out of the clubhouse?
Honest answer, none. And the reason why is you expect that in contract negotiations. I've been involved in a lot of these things, as far as being in the meetings and or Cliff Stein's doing the actual negotiating. But, people say, we went through this with Lance Briggs, and other things. You hear a lot of things. You MF each other type, well, more the player than the team. The team usually keeps their mouth shut. But it goes in one ear and out the other. So what? You make the deal, everybody's happy, and you're back to having a nice marriage. It doesn't mean a thing. So, people pointed that out on Twitter yesterday. In all honesty, because I've been through it, I laughed at it because and you look around the league and you see where there's been, tough negotiations going on between players. Deebo Samuel, perfect example. I want out of here. They don't respect me. They don't like me. Well, he loves it in San Francisco now because he got his money.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, people can say Roquan's not worth $20 million. Maybe he's not. But maybe if you offered him 17, you're going to get a deal done. I don't know what the deal is. It's as simple as this. It's not that I'm for or against the trade. They had him 8 games within the system, and they decided that they wanted something different. And so they moved on, and they got, a second and a fifth is pretty good. And they got, as a throw in AJ Klein, who is not, he's not chopped liver. He's not a bad player. He's mainly a Sam linebacker who doesn't play much in this scheme, but he can play the mic if he needs to. What's really important here, Aldo, is what they do with the picks. How are these picks? And now they got to fill that position, so it becomes a need. Now, there could be some exceptions there. Okay, what are the exceptions? Somebody could step up from the existing players. Now, okay, everybody's a big fan of somebody just came in to see me. Oh, my dog.
It's Bennett.
So, Sanborn had a real good preseason, but he's an undrafted free agent. He was an undrafted free agent for a reason. Okay, now he may come in. I think he is better at Mike than he is at Will. Part of it is his athleticism. Lost my train of thought there for a second. It wouldn't shock me, and and you won't see it, you won't hear about it in practice unless Flus breaks his silence on things. Wouldn't shock me if Morrow gets moved over to Will, and then they put Sanborn in at the mic, because I think Sanborn's better off at the mic. And from a skill set point of view, Morrow can play the Will. There's not a huge difference between the two. And what they're being asked to do. But the way the defense is set up, everything gets funneled towards that Will linebacker. And Morrow's been pretty productive since he's been here. The other name who Somebody said he had a tantrum. Who cares if he had a tantrum going back? That means nothing.
Mhm.
That's what you expect in contract negotiations. The other guy, sort of like the silent name, that might make sense in this is Sterling Weatherford. And I was, and you look at that name. Remember Gilligan's Island? Yeah, Thurston Powell the Third. That's that's the name you need for Sterling Weatherford. He seems like some monarch or something.
Or working in the analytics department. That's right. But
this guy, another undrafted free agent, very instinctive, not that big. He's only he's probably 230 now, but the Colts did not want to lose him. They had to waive him, wanted him on the practice squad to be able to bring up. He had a good preseason. He's very, very athletic. So that's a name to figure in too. So maybe in their thinking, they've already got the situation solved. Now we got to see it play out. And until we see it play out, we're not going to know. They're always going to be a step ahead of us because, we're getting it on the back end.
Mm-hmm. So Alex Sims, asked the question, would you give Roquan Smith $20 million a year?
Well, okay, here's the option you had. You had the option of putting the tag on him next year. The tag would have been, if I'm correct, I think in the area of around 18 and a half. So that's your starting point. So if you can get an average of 18 and a half, that's not 20. Everybody says 20, but you go back to the one thing he said when they said, well, they can tag you next year. Would you do that? And he goes, I'd sign that in a minute.
Yep.
A lot more money than I'm making now. So he already gave into 18 and a half million. You never know. We don't know where Cliff went money-wise on this, and we're never going to know.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So Sam Rush asked this question. Roquan has missed too many tackles. It's not a question, it's a comment. Roquan has missed too many routine plays at critical points in the game for me to command inside linebacker, for him to command inside linebacker money. I wonder how hard he works off the field in the weight room and if he's putting in the work. Your thoughts, Greg?
He's known to be an extremely hard worker. What he did this past offseason, I don't know, because, he had kind of like his walk-in or hold-in or whatever the hell they call it. And he wasn't participating in practice during the offseason, but he was there, takes care of his body. I don't think, in fairness, he looked as fast as he did in previous years this season. Now, this is a guy who ran in the low 4.5s at the combine coming out. And now everybody loses speed once they get in the league. That you can take those combine numbers and shove them because those are trained numbers, not necessarily, real speed. But, he's playing more like a 4.65 guy this year. That could have been a concern. But, people say tackles aren't important. Bullshit. Guy leads the league in tackles.
That's right.
Okay. And the Ravens, now he might be a better fit in the Ravens scheme than he is here. Again, I know what we wanted from the will linebacker position and pretty much the same defense. And Roquan was a perfect fit for that position. But given what Ryan Poles is trying to do, and this has become his team, so he's allowed to make this team or structure this team the way he really wants to. And I'm sure, he's not doing it all on his own. He's doing it, with the help of Flus. And they're making these decisions. And if Flus said, I want this guy, there's no way he would have traded him. So they made those decisions. So now let's move on. Could there be another trade?
Derek asked a good question. How similar are Roquan Smith and Lance Briggs?
Lance was highly instinctive, but Roquan's highly instinctive. Don't forget now, this is the first year. It's an entirely different scheme than he's played his first 4 years in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it takes some time to learn how to play within a new scheme because you're being asked to do different things. I think Lance is better in coverage. Lance was a running back, in high school. And a lot of running backs, for some reason, he was a big running back and a very productive one. And a lot of running backs turn into good linebackers. But, I think Lance was better in coverage. Roquan's better rushing the passer. They're about the same as far as stepping up and filling. Both got great instincts. Roquan's faster. Lance Briggs was a 4.78. I had the card sitting, we've told the story 1,000 times. The card was, his draft card was sitting, in my office when we hired Lovey, and Lovey looked at that time and said, I can't play with him at will. And then we had to, talk Lovey into it. But it's a good comparison. The guy's a hell of a football player. I don't like people who don't necessarily understand the defense and what the guy's being asked to do. Let me say this about the defense. Defense is a gap-controlled defense. You have an assignment. And I'll go back to when Lovey was here, and during individual, Bob Babich was the coach of the linebackers. And the drills they would do, they'd have 3 big garbage cans lined up or 4 big garbage cans lined up as your 4 defensive linemen. And then where the linebackers were gonna, the linebackers were where they were supposed to be positioned. And then each player of that front 7 has a gap. And you can't break that. You have to do your assignment. Okay, because if you freelance, you leave a gap open, and that's a cutback lane, and it can lead to a big play. So there's times where people say, well, he didn't go to the ball, he was doing this. Well, guess what? That's what his freaking assignment was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and when the coaches do the tape, they know that if the guy breaks an assignment, they get downgraded, even if they make the tackle.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Yeah, I'm glad you explained that, because I see that a lot on social media. It's this player's fault, and I wonder sometimes, well, wait a minute, perhaps that was his gap, and he's, doing as he was told, as you just pointed out. Okay,
well, it's a single gap defense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as you get a lot of 3-4 schemes that are played in 2 gaps. And a lot of times, your defensive linemen are head up on an offensive lineman, and they're responsible for the gap to the left and the gap to the right. When they stand up, they try to stand up the offensive lineman, not give away any ground, and that allows them to step right or step left if the play is going that way. This defense is entirely different. It relies more on speed and athleticism, but you have to play disciplined within the scheme, and you cannot break your assignment. You have to have that gap control assignment.
Yeah. All right. It's unfortunate that we're doing this a few hours before the trade deadline, because you know what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Something's going to happen right after we go off the air. So let me go player by player here. Players who are rumored to be on the bubble, the trade bubble, so to speak. Let's start with running back David Montgomery, who is a free agent at the end of the season. Do you think he is traded sometime today?
I think it's possible. And as I told you off air before we started, I had a text conversation. And I wrote this morning in Windy City Gridiron, so it's out there. I had text conversation with 2 decision makers last night. I'm going to say 9:00 last night. My question to both of them was, to the best of your knowledge, is David Montgomery on the trading block? I got answers within 5 minutes. The one said, the one that was funny goes, to the best of my knowledge, no. And the other one said, I haven't heard anything on Montgomery except what you read in the paper. And he goes, those are never true. And then he added, Why would they trade him? You can't get anything. He's a running back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the unfortunate market now for running backs. They're so replaceable. But a guy like David Montgomery, he's a bigger loss if you trade him than a gain if you trade him. Because as you said, if you get anything at all, you're gonna get a late round draft pick. But his value to this team transcends the numbers. I saw Brian Perez today talk about, Khalil Herbert should be the number one because his yards per average carry and so forth. But you cannot measure what David Montgomery means to this team just solely in stats. And by the way, Jonathan Wood, a good buddy of yours on social media, said that looked at some analytics and proclaimed that David Montgomery is the much more reliable pass catcher, not just pass blocker, but pass catcher. And so what Montgomery means to this team is huge. I can't see them moving him. I just can't see that.
Well, could they? Yes. Are there some teams that want to get a running back? I mean, there's a rumor that he's going to go to the Rams and they're going to get a draft pick and Cam Akers back. Why would this team want Cam Akers when he's a problem? That's the last guy they're going to want. Okay, so watch that trade will happen at 1:00. Where Monty is good. First of all, he's a better inside runner, power runner than Khalil is. Khalil is better in space and got better home run ability. Montgomery's better in the pass game and both parts of the pass game. He is a superb pass protector, and he's a very good receiver, and he's good after the catch. Hilbert, you go back and look at what Khalil did in college as a receiver. Not a whole lot. And I'm not really it's can he learn how? Yes. It's just through a lot of repetition, working on his hands, but he's not the receiver that Monty is. He gives you a more explosive person as a pure runner. Mm-hmm. What I personally feel is they're both complementary of each other. They give you something different, and that puts pressure on the defense because of what each can do when they're in there. Mm-hmm. So, yes. Do I think he's going to get traded? No, and for the reasons I said. Willie, we got 4 hours, 3.5 hours before the trade deadline. We'll find out what happens in the next 3.5 hours.
Yeah. I can accept the Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn trades. The idea of moving your best running back at protecting the quarterback with his pass blocking and such an incredible leader, one who George McCaskey himself singled out at the end of the season. He could have singled out any player. Justin Fields, his franchise quarterback, could have singled out any player, but he singled out David Montgomery for his professionalism, and Ryan Poles himself singled him out. When asked a question about the possibility of trading David Montgomery, Ryan Poles said he's one of my favorite players on this team. They didn't say yes or no, but
but he also said I love Roquan Smith.
It's a dirty business.
I believe me, I get it. I'd love to be in the room for those discussions.
Yeah.
But how about this? And I tweeted it out yesterday. And Eric DeCosta, who's the Ravens general manager, he got this. He was the assistant GM to Ozzie Newsome, was one of the all-time great GMs. Yeah, they are great with picking up compensatory picks. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they pay a 2 and a 5 and a throw-in player to get Roquan Smith. Okay, now fast forward. They can't franchise him because they don't have the quarterback signed. And the quarterback's coming out of contract, Lamar Jackson. So who the hell do you think is going to get the franchise tag?
Lamar will.
The quarterback, if the quarterback doesn't have a deal done, he's getting franchised. You know that. So could they re-sign him? Absolutely they could. But if they lose him and he gets a good deal somewhere, they're going to get a compensatory pick because
Mhm.
Baltimore doesn't sign a lot of free agents, so they win on the compensatory thing. He's going to get a third or a fourth round compensatory pick if he loses, if he loses Roquan on in free agency. And so now you think, okay, now look at the trade. Okay, I get a half season when I'm trying to get to the playoffs with the premier inside linebacker for a 2 and a 5, and I get a third back or I get a fourth back. Okay, that softens the deal a little bit for him.
And you may have mentioned this, I may have lost it, but the Bears are paying for Roquan's salary, a good portion of it this year, so it doesn't cost.
They pay they're paying in both Philadelphia and Baltimore's part. They're paying the minimum salary for the remainder of the year. To me, that's not a big deal.
No,
it was on the books. It was on the books to begin with,
exactly.
And it's not going to have. What he's trying to do is create assets for next year, and so the money's off the books next year anyway. So paying the salary. If paying the salary means getting an extra round, a 2 versus a 3, pay the salary.
Right. Somebody in the chat room, who is it? Joe just mentioned that there has been a trade with the Vikings and the Lions. The Vikings are sending.
That's the second time those two have traded, isn't it?
I believe so.
Since summer.
Yeah. The Vikings are sending a 2023 second rounder and 2024 fourth rounder for TJ Hawkinson. And there's also some conditional picks available there. Yeah, it's kind of strange that we're seeing these interdivisional trades. I want to get back to our list of players, but before I do that, one of the things that I think is happening here, Greg, is that there seems to be a transformation. We are seeing now mid-season trades, unlike we have in years past. Historically, we don't see much action right before the trade deadline, but I think that's slowly changing. What do you think?
Well, yes, and I gave this some thought before we came on the show. Look at, in most cases, the people who are getting traded. There's a common denominator there.
Guys
coming out of contract, we don't want you anymore. And so it's not like you're trading a guy who's got 3 years left on his deal.
Yep, I agree. All right, another player I want to get your thoughts on trading, and I got to share mine first, is there's a lot of talk about Eddie Jackson potentially being moved. I cannot fathom them even thinking that, because Jaquan Brisker's development will be slowed by such a move, and even Kyler Gordon his development would be disruptive. As you pointed out to me last year when Eddie Jackson had a long list of detractors, you pointed out Eddie Jackson is the quarterback of this defensive backfield. You don't see a lot of the things that he does for the positive for this team. And this year, he's even made himself more worthy of being kept with the Chicago Bears. So what do you think?
As good as he was the first 2 years in the league, he's better this year. By far the best season he's ever had as a pro. And where he stepped up from previous years is his tackling and hitting ability.
Yeah. He's still not going to win any Hall of Fame votes for his tackling, but
he's not a knockout guy,
right.
But he gets him down. He's throwing his body around a lot more than he used to do. He's getting involved more. And you know what? He knows he has to.
Yep.
And I think it was Greg Braggs tweeted it out yesterday, where you should extend Eddie Jackson, and if not, trade him. Is he out of his freaking mind? He's got 2 years left on his contract.
I don't get it.
and when he's done with that contract, he's going to be 31 years old and 8 years in the league.
Yeah, I think a brick may have fallen on Greg's head just before.
No, you don't extend somebody, and that's not 2 years including this year. That's 23 and 24.
Right, exactly. So
you've got 2.5 more years before you even think about it.
Okay. So here's another one that I can't phantom, but who knows? It could happen. Tevin Jenkins is somebody that there's lots of speculation because apparently, according to Dan Wiederer in one of his columns, there was some animosity between Bears management and Tevin Jenkins, and they may not be completely sold on him as a member of the Chicago Bears and clubhouse influence. And I'm paraphrasing there a bit, Mr. Wiederer, so I apologize. What do you think about the Bears potentially moving Jenkins?
My personal feeling?
Yeah,
totally
please.
Ludicrous. He's the best lineman they have.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and you're already playing, Borum's out, so you put in Riley Reef. Whitehair's out, so you got another guy playing. Schofield's playing over at left guard. You tried to replace Mustipher with Patrick. He hurts his foot, gets a turf toe or something. So he's out at least 3 more weeks. And by the way, Mustipher played probably his best game in 2 years.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
As weak as some of the other guys were, he played his best game in 2 years.
Yeah, he did.
Last week. Now, part of that may have been, well, I have been too good. I better step it up.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I can't think of any other names. Riley Reef's name has come up, but I'm not buying them moving anyone on their offensive line unless they're getting great value back. But those are the names.
Tevin Jenkins is on a rookie deal. You got a lot of time left, and he might be an immature kid, but he is the most talented player on that offensive line right now. And the other guy who might be a close second, and I wrote about him last week because I think he's going to be a great pro, even though he's struggling as a rookie, is Braxton Jones.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The traits he has second round traits. Went to an FCS level school, a low FCS level school.
Mm-hmm.
And he is already a very good run blocker. He's got it's going to take some time, but he's got to become a better pass blocker. And when that happens,
mm-hmm.
he's going to be one of the better left tackles in the league. The athleticism is tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 35.5-inch arms. I believe from watching him, he's got to get stronger in the lower body. Now,
mm-hmm.
how much stronger he can get, that remains to be seen, because it's not like he's got a big ass like Tevin Jenkins has or some
mm-hmm.
of those other guys. But the guy he reminded me of body-wise,
mm-hmm.
and when I wrote this article, and you look at it, their numbers were almost identical from height, weight, arm length, and athletic numbers as Ronnie Stanley.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'm not saying he's going to become Ronnie Stanley. I'm just saying that physically, that's the comp.
Okay. As a former head of scouting for the Chicago Bears, you must be thrilled when you look at this. The Bears 2023 draft picks, their first rounder, their second rounder, the Ravens second rounder, their third rounder, their fourth rounder, the Eagles fourth rounder, their 2 fifth rounders, one of them from the Ravens, and their own 7th rounder. I actually did it.
Well, the 1/5 could end up being the Patriots instead of the Ravens. The way the deal was structured is the Ravens got 2 5s, their own and New England's. They get the better of the 2 at the end of the year.
Nice. I didn't know that. I like that. So, but that is a nice haul. The one thing, though, the one question that I had for you, Greg, this kind of bugs me a lot is, and I think we've talked about this before. You may have mentioned it earlier in the show. You've got players on the team like Roquan, like Eddie Jackson, or you had Roquan. Why trade them away for draft assets? Because essentially that's what you want to get. You want to find a Roquan Smith. You want to find an Eddie Jackson. You mentioned the Dan Pompey.
26 years old and already at the peak of his game. Why? That's the part I don't get. But hey, you know what? They wanted to do it. He's not their guy, and they want all their guys in there. So, but we talked about it. The replacement could already be in house, and where's he getting the 7th round comp pick? That's not a lock yet.
Yeah, that's not a lock yet. You never know what could happen with those comp picks, man. It's complicated.
The formula for comp picks doesn't end until March because really it's at the end of the season. They get announced then, but there's play time involved, honors involved, injuries are involved, and we're only halfway through the season. So it's not, people think it's strictly contract. It's not. It's what they do that first season and only the first season with the new club. If they get hurt in training camp, no matter what kind of contract they got, you're SOL as far as a comp pick goes.
Yep. So Free Palestine asked the question, do you think Flus had a say about the trade? Maybe Flus didn't mesh well with Roquan Smith, or their staff didn't.
Possibility.
Yeah. But it sounds to me like Eberflus is just being a good soldier. In last week's press conference, he says, we will always do what's best for the team when he was asked about the Robert Quinn trade. So he's not going to publicly and maybe even privately question what his boss, Ryan Poles, is doing.
Okay. When you look at contracts, Flus's contract versus Ryan Poles' contract, Poles is his superior and he has control of the roster. Flus has control of who plays on Sunday. But don't think for a minute they're not going to be hand in hand on many of these decisions. That you don't want to say, hey, I'm getting rid of this guy, I'm the boss. It just doesn't work that way. You're going to create a very unhappy working environment. And, these two, Poles picked Flus. He could have picked another guy, to be Brian Dable or whatever, to be the head coach. He picked Flus. Okay. And in all honesty, I like the pick, and I like it more every day. Just the way Flus handles things, and the way, just look at the night and day between the pressers between the last couple of years and this year. He tells you what it is, and he's pretty honest. He's not going to tell you about injuries, but he's pretty honest about everything.
Yes, he is. All right, we need to talk about the game on Sunday, as much as we don't want to talk about it. But my first question has to do with the third-round draft pick, Velus Jones, and we all saw it, a beautifully deep pass by Justin Fields and Velus Jones. It goes right off his fingertips. What say you about Velus Jones and his development, slow development in the passing game? Is this just rookie stuff?
I think a lot of it is, and part of it is confidence. And, we talked about it with Justin too, just a few weeks ago. He needs to get off to a quick start to develop some confidence within the game. And lo and behold, what's happened the last 2 weeks? He's gotten off to a good start in those games, and he's played pretty darn good. This guy needs some good things to happen. Okay. And, on that particular play, I think he left his feet just a little bit too early. Play it one more time. I think his feet got tangled a little bit. No, not really.
His left foot drags. Watch it as it comes here. Watch his left foot right there. It drags for some reason. So maybe
he left his feet too early for whatever reason. And if he keeps balance, then he makes that catch. He's a pro. He's supposed to make that catch. It was a very well thrown ball. Are you going to hold it against him? Yes. Are you going to withhold reps from him in the next game or so? Maybe. But don't forget, reps during a game come from how a guy practices. So he's getting in games because he's practicing pretty good.
Right.
And so, that's where they start to develop. But he's had some, he double caught that other pass late in the game to the left side on some of the runs. Shit, he's been outstanding. When he's got the ball in his hand, he's electric. I think, I'm not standing up for him, but you got to let rookies be rookies.
Mm-hmm.
And I stole that one from Marv Levy. And
a good person to steal it from.
And he's the talent's there. Now here's the thing. Okay, brings up a question: are the Bears going to trade for anybody?
Yes, good question. Great question.
Could they? Yeah. Everybody said, "Oh, we got to get another receiver." Do I think it's going to happen? No. So that right away, we know that there's going to get a new receiver within the next hour or so. And here's why I think that. First of all, they haven't had a healthy wide receiver room since like the second day of training camp. There's always been somebody out. And this week, Pringle started practicing last week. This week, they may bring him up off the injured reserve list, and you're going to have going into this game the healthiest group of wide receivers that they've had really since training camp started. Mm-hmm. So now if you bring in somebody else, especially somebody who played in a different system, now if you got somebody that played within a very similar scheme, same terminology, it's easier to get them acclimated and get them on the field. Mm-hmm. But like there's that name, the kid from New England, Bourne, I think his name is, entirely different scheme. It's going to be 3 weeks before he's ready to step on the field. You might get a play for him here, a play for him there. I mean, perfect example is Harry, who came from New England. He's only getting spot duty now because he's still not totally up to date with exactly what they're doing on the offense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you see the flashes of his talent. But now he's healthy. Valus is healthy. Pringle's healthy. So you've got some guys that you say, okay, let's see what they can do. And then you make a decision at the end of the season. A lot of these guys are like EQ, I thought might be out for a while when he first hurt his knee the other day, and he came back. That's a tough kid now. And when he got back and came in later in the game, do I think they extend him give him a new deal after this year? Yep, I do. Don't know about Pringle because he's been hurt twice now. And, you can't make the club in the tub. And after that, I don't know. But there's all these people that think, well, they're going to use that first round pick on a receiver. I bet right now they don't.
Why is that?
While the wide receiver class is extremely deep. Yeah. I've done a bunch of them. You're going to get first round guys in the second round. You're going to get second round guys value wise. I'm talking, because you look at the average number of receivers that go in each round. That's what you always do. You go through the draft. Okay, say you go back 10 years. This is how many go in the first round. This is how many go in the second round. This is how many go in the third round. So and then you look at your board, your stack. And the grade you have on those guys, regardless of what the grades are, you take the averages, the analytics of previous drafts, and you say, I'm going to get a hell of a player in the second round, especially where I'm picking. And then you look at what are you got to build from the inside out. Mm-hmm. Okay. And also, before you even think about that, you've got to let the season play out. Let some of these guys, you're going to know a lot more about some of these players 9 weeks from now than you know right now. Mm-hmm. You follow what I'm saying? So it's where exactly do we have huge needs? And yeah, they're going to have a need at wide receiver, but could they fill that need in free agency? Oh, they're going to have $125 million.
Mm-hmm.
They're okay. They're not going to be spending 15 or 20 on Roquan because he's gone.
Right.
So where are they going to spend that money? And I don't think for a minute they're going to spend $125 million. He's going to, if you just look at how he's handled money since he got here, he handles it like it's his. And it's,
He really does.
And he's not going to overspend. He's going to pay fair deals. And now, when you sign guys the first couple of days, sometimes you pay a little bit of a premium. But I don't think he's going to be the type that's going to pay a huge premium like Jacksonville did with the wide receiver and just broke the wide receiver market wide open. You're gonna do fair prices, but you've got to get more on the defensive line. Have to. And those are, how is the draft going to hit? They're probably going to have a top 10 pick, especially now. I mean, the defense, you just took away two of the best players on the defense. And granted, Quinn didn't have the production yet this year, but he still had a presence. He was getting pressures. And now you took away the leading tackler in the league. Okay, how's that defense going to play for the rest of the year? Is every game going to be like Dallas and they're going to give up 40 and score 30?
Yeah, and so we have to continue to focus here on this Bears defense. On tonight's show with Dan Aguirre, he and I are going to debate a little bit about Alan Williams because Dan, as a fan, has already thrown in the towel. And Alan Williams says, get rid of him. He's no good and so forth. And I'm like, come on. He needs players in order to have success. And if anything, you need to look at the position coaches and how are they working with the players, because that's how this coaching staff works. It's the coordinator who comes up with the overall scheme, and then it's the position coaches that develop the relationships with the players and try to coach them up and discipline them to stay in their gaps and do all of that. That, that to me is debatable, whether a position coach has done well or not. But to blame Alan Williams for the 49 points that were put up, to me, is wrong. What say you, Greg?
I agree with you. I got two theories on part of this. Number one, it was their fourth road game in 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what team you are. That wears on you. That is hard. Okay. Number two, you traded away Quinn, and you can't tell me Roquan didn't think he was going to be the next guy out the door. Mm-hmm. That's the way he played. And I think that had an effect on the defense too. And then, hey, Dallas was on their game. As Parcells used to say, those guys are on scholarship too. You're not playing an FCS team here. You're playing an SEC team, and they played good at home. And Dak Prescott, second week back after the injury, he was more on his game. So there's not an excuse. It's just fact. Now, the defense did play poorly. They played a little better in the second half, but not much. But go back to the weeks before that. Defense has played pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now you're going to crucify the guy for one game?
Yeah, I don't understand that. And
because you look at the defensive record, what they points allowed, all that other stuff, they're pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Renewable says my man Dan Aguirre deep down probably still believes in Santa Claus. No, he doesn't. Stop that. All right. So what was the biggest reason besides what you've just mentioned regarding, this team scores 4 touchdowns, this team being the Cowboys, in their first 4 possessions? Is this also sort of the snowball effect where things got a lot of hand, it gets worse and it gets worse, and before you know it, you're down 28-7?
Yeah, and then they started to come back. I don't have an answer. they didn't show up.
Yeah.
Defense didn't show up. And yeah, is it a cause for concern? Absolutely. Does it get somebody fired? No. Now, if it continues, and then I'll backtrack a little bit on that. If it continues, is it even fair to bring in some of the stuff? You still got two guys that were a key part of that defense when the season began, who aren't going to be with them the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And two guys that are very important off the field with those players as well as on the field.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Tareen tells us that Zach Pearson and actually Patrick Finley too are saying that Ryan Poles will hold a press conference after the trade deadline, and it's been announced as at 4 p.m. Central by Patrick Finley. So at 4 p.m. Central, Ryan Poles will talk to the media. We'll be tuning into that, and then tonight Dan and Aldo bare their souls will cover what Poles has to say. All right, one of the things that Alan Williams talked about in his last press conference on this past Thursday, was the whole thing about gap integrity, the whole thing about fundamentals, the whole thing about, basically saying, everyone has to do a better job, but it always all starts with the fundamentals of football, tackling and doing your job, to use the Bill Belichick phrase. So when I'm asked, what happened with the 49 points, what's going on with this defense, I think that's one of the key reasons. And as you mentioned earlier in the show, the Robert Quinn trade, deflated this team, and potentially Roquan Smith getting wind that he was going to be moved. I mean, Roquan, as you said, Greg, had one of his worst games as a Chicago Bear.
After having one of his best the week before.
Exactly. So, let's close the chapter on this defense. Hopefully there isn't this hangover effect of the defense against the Miami Dolphins. Although,
well, I'll tell you, look at Jalen. Last night, he's on. I didn't hear it. I read about it.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's on the score. And, he was at a loss for words.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's two guys have been taken out of that locker room that were important parts of the defense. And I said this last week, what do you got to do to stay here? But you got to look at the big picture. And that's what I think, and I hope I'm right. He's trading this year for the potential of next year. Mm-hmm. I'm calling this year a tryout year. This is a tryout year to find out who's going to be here and who isn't going to be here. Mm-hmm. They've made decisions on two players already. They're not going to be here and they're already gone. And that's what's going on the rest of the year. And then when you got more than double the cap space of any other team in the league next year, and you got a bunch of high draft picks that, by the way, with a little bit of finagling, you can turn those 5 first 3-round picks into 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. A little bit of trade down here and a trade down there, depending on what you're looking at. We'll get into that next spring when you find out exactly where they're picking and where these other picks are. They got a chance to do something, rebuild fairly quickly. But the key is they got to sign the right guys and they got to draft the right guys.
Yep. Kenny has a great chat comment here. Roquan, remember, he asked to be traded. I mean, he asked for it. Yes.
And there's not a guy who's had a problematic contract dispute that hasn't asked to be traded.
Exactly.
Again, I've been through these things so many times through the years. It goes into this year, out this year, and you forget about it 5 seconds after it was said.
Indeed. All right. Well, back to the game against the Cowboys. I think, we're all, of course, disappointed with the defense and the lopsided score. But what was fascinating and we cannot forget is the 29 points that the Chicago Bears offense did score. That was the most by a team against the Cowboys all season, one of the best defenses in the National Football League, and to do it in Dallas and to do it at in a situation where the opposing team has gotten off to such a huge lead on you, I thought was all very, very impressive. What stood out to you about the offense's play against the Cowboys?
Well, the play calling has changed. And on top of that, you're getting some healthy people. The passing game has gotten better. Part of that is the health of receivers. Part of that is Justin is becoming more comfortable within the system, as are the receivers. So you've got a connection. So I think it's a combination of all. There was a couple things that bothered me in the game, and I can't tell you. A coach would have to tell you what the fault was, because it was the exact same problem twice. And the first time it happened was on that original 2-point conversion, and the left defensive end came in untouched and just about decapitated Justin. And then there was another play later, the exact same thing happened. The left defensive end came in untouched. Both times, Riley Reef was blocking down inside instead of now, number one, was Reef supposed to be blocking inside, or was he supposed to, who was supposed to pick up that free edge rusher? Okay, so to me, there was a breakdown there. Was it Reef? Was it a back? I don't know, but they came in untouched twice.
They did indeed come in untouched twice. I got some questions here I want to make sure we get to before the end of the show. Jamal Lewis asked, would Greg trade both second-round picks for a first-rounder? I know that's a huge hypothetical, but if you see somebody in the top 5, and we're not already drafting in the top 5, which I think we're headed to, would you move draft assets, especially 2 valuable second-rounders, to move it up to get that coveted 3-tech player who's going to go in the top 5, or that coveted offensive lineman? What are your thoughts?
It's a hypothetical, obviously, and it depends how your board's set up. Mm-hmm. First of all, where are the 2s? Where do you want to get with it? And to give up 2 2s, you got to figure in the chart and say, okay, these are the value of the 2 2s. What do those 2 2s give me value-wise to get into the first?
Yep. Okay,
and how high? And then on top of that, how's your board set? So who's the player you're after? Mm-hmm. And when you have that figured out, around the 15th or 20th of April, and so, we're sitting here, it's November 1st. It's a long way away. You got to go through the whole, it's a big process. You got to go through it step by step. Right now, you don't even know who the hell's in the draft. The other class, speculation means nothing until they actually declare. They can publicly declare whenever they want. It doesn't become official. The date is on or about the 15th of January. And then they have a 3-day cooling off period, so to speak, where if they haven't hired an agent, even though they had asked to be in the draft, they can withdraw from the draft. And so the league then doesn't put out the list of names until 3 days after the close date.
Nomad has a great question here about a team that I know you have a big interest in, is the Indianapolis Colts. He's curious what do you think will be the next shoe to drop in Indianapolis, and is that fantastic, made in heaven 3-tech defensive tackle Buckner, could he be had?
No chance. When they're hard to find. And Ballard couldn't get one in the draft, so he had to give up a 1 to get one. Mm-hmm. And he said, I remember I sent him a text right after, probably within minutes of that trade being announced. He said, Greg, I was sweating that one out for the last 10 days. And that's how important that position is to this scheme. Now, if you're going to get one, there's a lot of good defensive tackles. Are there a lot of good 3 techniques who can play the position the way you want the position to be played? I don't think Jones is I think he's good. I don't think he's great. Ideally, you want Tommy Harris, you want Buckner. Those are the guys you want. Okay. How often do they come around? They don't. Sometimes you got to create them. Right now, they're trying to create them. Ogunjobi probably would have been close to ideal. Mm-hmm. He flunked the medical. I get that part. So could they have been patient with it? That was more a doctor decision than a front office decision. The doctor said no, and Poles will get the heat on it. But right. That's the medical staff said no. And you can't overrule those guys.
Yeah. I have another question here that I've been saving for you.
Sounded like you were at a loss for words there for a second.
I wanted to see if Schefter had put up anything on Twitter regarding the Bears, and so I did a quick check. There's no new news on that. Given that Poles has already stated he's going to meet with the media at 4:00, that probably means he's done trading. I would be surprised if there was
not necessarily.
Okay,
because I mean the deadline's 3. So somebody could call it 2:30 with an outrageous offer for, say, a Monty, and at 2:45 they could make the deal, as long as the deal's done by 3:00. So he didn't make the if everything was done, why wouldn't he have the presser at 2?
Yeah, well, but the phone can ring at 2:00.
That's right. So he's doing it at 4.
I get it.
So I mean, he's covering all the bases, and then we'll see what happens.
I'm really glad that he's making himself available to the media. He's, we talked about this last week, but the fact of the matter is that with the team undergoing such dramatic change and many fans not understanding what this general manager is doing and his overall plan and him getting heat, the best way to, the word I want to use, and I hope I'm using it properly, is assuage the fans' concerns over all of these moves. And the best way to do that is to communicate with the fans via the media.
Well, I think he's trying to, make this team into his own image and likeness, so to speak. Okay, he's going to do it his way.
So you better
he's got the job. This is the way he wants to build a team, and it's going to fall on him. He's the guy who's going to end up being held accountable if it doesn't work. So it's I like some of the things. What Ryan Pace did was try to get quick fixes.
Yeah.
And quick fixes do nothing but get you in trouble. Okay, overpaying for veteran free agents. The fans will scream, well, why didn't you pay for this guy? Because if you're overpaying, 2 or 3 years from now, it's going to come back and haunt you. Number 1, he might not produce. Number 2, you might have camp problems. Number 3, you could have both. Yep. And so you've got to be very, very careful with how you handle the situation. Like I said, repeating myself, he's going to have $125 million. I don't expect him to spend anywhere close to that $125 million just because he has it. He can spread that out over a couple of years if he wants to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is, too, if Justin Fields becomes the quarterback we're all dreaming that he can be,
You're right. He's gonna get some money.
he will be the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League because that's how it works. Patrick Mahomes was, and then a year later, somebody else, I forget who has.
Josh Allen was right in there.
Yeah. So
yeah, and those guys are making peanuts now compared to what some of the deals are getting now. No, it's going to be interesting that, as far as Fields, because you look at, say, a comp player, and a comp player might be Lamar Jackson. Is what does Lamar Jackson finally end up with?
That is going to be the next big story. And I'd be surprised if the Ravens allowed him to check the market, so to speak. So we'll see. That's something.
Well, they've always, they got the tag. They can tag him. Right. And players don't want the tag but there's not a whole lot they can do about it. It's like, okay, if I don't play, you don't get paid. It's real simple.
Yep. Interesting question here from, by the way, Taurine has just broken some news for us. ESPN 1000 will be the home of the Chicago Bears, the radio home for the Chicago Bears in 2023. And so I've got a message for our friends over at ESPN 1000. This guy here on the screen, Greg Gabriel, if you don't hire him to do analysis throughout the week and on game days, you're missing out on an incredible talent. Take advantage of this talent. Greg Gabriel for ESPN 2023.
I think we've known for months that this was the last year of the contract with WBBM. And, that group, what are they called now? Audio or whatever they're called. Odyssey. Yeah. And they've gone all in on the Cubs and a couple other things. So having the money to get the Bears is, that was questionable. But the key here is it's already been announced. Joniak and Thayer are part of the deal. So, and I think Joniak is a great play-by-play guy.
Yes.
And his first year doing the play-by-play was my first year here. And, he's tremendous. And even though he works for WBBM, he will be part. Now, whether he ends up going over to ESPN 1000, that remains to be seen. But he will be the voice of the Chicago Bears, and Tom Thayer will be the analyst. But that's going to really take away from the score, I think, because the score is part of that Odyssey group of stations. And I think that in the long run, that's really going to hurt the score.
Yeah, I agree with you. Good analysis. The Factor asked another hypothetical, but I want to add to what he's asking here. If you had to guess, does Poles keep Justin Fields going forward even after 2023? What I'd like to add to that is, do you project that Justin Fields is going to continue to progress in the manner we've seen, particularly these last 2 or 3 weeks? I mean, he has looked from a question mark as a quarterback, in my mind, knowing, of course, that all of the issues involved with his play, second offensive coordinator, all that stuff. But he right now, he's projecting to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, in my mind. Do you have that same kind of projection? And what are your plans for Justin Fields moving forward?
Wow, that's loaded. I think part of the answer is wait and see. But I'm going to say this: last year we saw flashes. Okay, there wasn't consistency, but we saw flashes. There were some throws that very few quarterbacks can make. Remember, there's a throw to the left corner of the end zone into a window about this big to Mooney and a few others that were just terrific throws. This year, at the beginning of the year, there was flashes, but it was more negative than positive. 80% of that can be attributed to playing in an entirely different scheme. And I'm going to go back to this. Russell Wilson has sucked in Denver. And a year ago, this guy was one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. You can't tell. And I told you when I talked to a friend of mine who's been involved in this system, he said it's a damn hard system to learn. And most of it is because of the adjustments that have to be made during the course of a play. And that adjustment is on two people or two groups, the quarterback and the receivers. They both got to be on the same page and they got to make adjustments at full speed. So it takes time. Russell Wilson isn't going to, everybody's saying that was a bad trade for George Payton. But once he gets settled in within that system, and there's an if on that one, because does that coach last? Because that doesn't look like that was the right guy to be the head coach. Right. But, I think Justin is starting to feel comfortable. And on top of that, the coaching staff is starting to feel comfortable with what he can do. And they're making changes within the scheme to fit the strong points of Justin Fields. So right now, the arrow's going up. Mm-hmm. Does it continue to go up? We got to keep watching and see. I saw one thing on Twitter. I think it was Andrew Dennehy, who said after the Roquan trade, "Wow, this is it. They've given up on Fields, and they're going to go all in on a quarterback in the next draft." Okay, who are you going to take in the next draft that's going to be Justin Fields? You're going to take Stroud from Ohio State, who played in the same system?
Exactly.
Okay, you're going to take a 6-foot quarterback from Alabama?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you had a problem with taking 25-year-old Bayless Jones. You're going to take a 24-year-old quarterback from Tennessee who's having a hell of a year? Mm-hmm. Well, Tennessee is loaded with receivers. God damn.
Man. Unbelievable.
And their best is just getting back on the field. He got hurt after, I think, in the second game, and he played, I think he caught 3 or 4 passes. His name's Cedric Tillman. But they had another guy who's kind of jumped to the forefront when Tillman was out. They're loaded at receiver.
Jamal is asking about Daron Payne, who is scheduled to be a free agent at the end of the season. What do you know about? Frankly, I don't know much about Payne. What do you know about him? And
he's a hell of a player. Whether he is a 3, I think remains to be seen. Athletically, when you look at him coming out, you'd say, yes, he ran a 4.95. But let me throw this at you. When we took Tommy Harris measured 6'2" and 7/8, 295 pounds at the combine. Do you know what he ran?
No.
4.68.
Whoa.
Okay. Then we took because don't forget, we went from the elephant line down to a whole different scheme. Then we took Tank Johnson in the second round. Was also 6'2" and change, just under 6'3", weighed 305 pounds. You know what he ran?
Mm-hmm.
4.73.
Whoa.
Okay, so and their change of direction drills were excellent. That's part of what you want at the 3. Probably the best guy in last year's draft, and a guy that, I was thinking might be a good fit, went to Tampa Bay with the first pick of the second round. That was a kid from the University of Houston, and I can't remember his name. And he's been playing within the rotation. But the best guy to play the 3, very, very athletic guy, and he'd be more like Buckner in that he was a real tall guy and long guy. Now, Buckner, who was an excellent 3, he was only a 5.05, but his change of direction drills and his flexibility and his explosiveness were very good. So, but you want at that position, the guy's got to be a disruptor. He's got to be able to get off. He's got to be able to use his hands. He's got to be able to get off the ball very quick, get penetration, be disruptive in the run game, and provide an inside pass rush. He's got to be a good inside pass rusher. So, and those are some of the keys. And is there one? You know, I've done some of the linemen. You know, I think there's some, but it's like once you put your board together, where do they fit on your board? Because you can't. You know, we've talked about this before. Let's say you got a 68 on one guy and a 69 on another, a 67, but you got guys at other positions that have higher grades. You can't drop down to take the 3 because you can trade down, say, okay, this is what I got to get, so I'll trade down because I can still get them, and I'm going to pick up another second-round pick to do it.
Terrain has got another update here. He says Twitter is buzzing over the fact that Brandon Cooks was not at the Texans practice today. I frankly would be shocked if the Bears are going to make a trade for a wide receiver and lose or send draft assets for a wide receiver who's already got a big contract. I'm guessing you feel the same way.
No, I do. Like I said, I think Poles is right now collecting assets, not giving them away. And you got to look at the history of Brandon Cooks. Interesting name, because he hasn't stayed in any one place for more than about 2 years. Look at the length of his career and how many different teams he's been with. I think he's been with 4 or 5 teams already.
Let me see.
You're going to look it up?
Yep, I am.
He started at New England. And I know he's with New Orleans. He's with Houston.
Yeah, New Orleans, New England, Los Angeles Rams, and now with Houston. So that's 4 teams.
And how many years?
He joined the league in 2014, so 8 seasons.
8 seasons, 4. He's 2 years, 2 years a club, and then they throw him out the door.
I wonder why.
What's that tell you?
Yeah.
You know, so you're trying to build a culture.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why I said, you know, there was that rumor that Monty was going to the Rams for Akers and a draft pick. Why would you want Akers? Is a good back, but he's got a problem. I don't know what the problem is. I could find out what the problem is. I just got to make one phone call. But I wouldn't even make the call unless he was here. But it's why do you want to bring in somebody else's problem?
Yeah.
You know, if it's a character issue problem.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when you trade 2 popular players in the clubhouse, you don't want to bring in a guy who might have a reputation as a malcontent, because then all of a sudden players who are already questioning what the front office is doing, then are going to further those questions. And so it's not a good situation.
Well, yeah, because you know, all that goes into, wait a minute, they're preaching buying in.
Yeah.
And then guys are, how am I supposed to buy in? Exactly. And then if you bring in a malcontent, then that throws everything off. So you got to be, you know, to make a trade, you know, no, you better bring in a character guy.
Yeah, indeed. There's been a lot of chatter in the chat room about the front 7 for the Chicago Bears. And so I think the best question that kind of sums up what's going on there, the discontent by Bears fans, is Jimmy asking how quickly can a front 7 be fixed? I would imagine that can happen in a season, but you got to get lucky, right?
Well, yeah, and part of it's experience. Okay, now you've replaced Quinn with a 5th-round rookie, Robinson, who's only played defense. This is his 3rd year on defense in his life. I mean, this guy was a quarterback, then a wide receiver, and now he's a defensive end. He's got to learn how to play. The physical traits are excellent, and he flashes, making some plays, but he also gets himself out of place at times. And that's all part of the learning experience. There's only one way. It's the same with Braxton Jones. There's one way this guy is going to get better. Play. And he's going to learn by the mistakes he made, because you can't teach physical traits. And when you got them, you got to play the guy. And especially when you're looking at situations like Braxton Jones and Robinson, who Braxton comes from a lower level of comp, and Robinson position switch. But, he's got wide receiver athleticism, and he's playing defensive end. There's a lot of upside there. It's that change isn't going to be done overnight.
Indeed. All right. Toa asks about Peter Skoronski, the offensive tackle at Northwestern, who I am in love with.
I think he's a guard.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be 6'4". We'll find out. We'll find out. And I think he's going to be like 6'3.5". And he's great. There's no question. But now the same thing was said about the guy 2 years ago from Northwestern who went in the first round. He ended up measuring 6'4" even.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, and he had long enough arms. But if he's 6'3.5", 6'3 3/4, and has barely 33-inch arms, he's going to be playing inside, and he'll be damn good. But it's just that's the key. What's the real measurable with him? The guy's a great player, no question. But I'm not taking him. And the other part of that question is, okay, let's say he does fit the measurables, and he's available. Okay, would you take him at left tackle? What happens to Braxton Jones, who you're high on? Move more to the other side.
Yeah, right.
That not a big deal.
Right. I'm with you on that.
Keisha Boutte is very, very, very talented. Is he, what's going on upstairs with him?
That's what I'm concerned about too. He disappears or he acts strange. I don't know.
No, it's the more acts strange than disappears.
Yeah.
But, he's got a little diva to him. I'll tell you what, there are some great receivers in this draft. It's what do you want? Do you want a smaller guy who can run like hell? Do you want a tall guy who's long, who's got a receiving radius like a spider? They're all different kinds because all of them are in the draft.
Right. And I would add one very important characteristic is the ability and desire to run block, because that's been a big part of the success for the Chicago Bears running team. And it's hard for me to imagine that they're going to transform from a running team to a passing team in just one season. I think you're going to see this team committed to the run in 2023 until they get all the necessary weapons that are needed for a high-flying passing attack. One more question here, and then we'll get out of here, Greg. Bear Truth 9, who's the better prospect, and who does Greg pick out for the will linebacker? Anderson out of Alabama?
Anderson's an edge. He's not a linebacker.
Okay.
Now he might be listed as a linebacker for Alabama the way their scheme is, because they have a base 3-4, and he's an outside linebacker in the base 3-4. But he's an edge. He's a pass rusher, and he's one of the best pass rushers in this next draft. Carter would be your 3, and he'd be a big 3.
Yeah. Both of those guys would be great acquisitions for the Bears, but those are 2 first-rounders. I'd love, if anything, if the Bears can somehow get a second first-round pick, I would love to see that happen.
Yeah, but here's what's going to happen. Because let's say they're 8th or 9th, okay, or picking, in that area, maybe 10th. Chances are, no 2 boards are alike. They're going to get a guy rated in their top 25, 26 at 38 or 39. Happens all the time. People say, how's that possible? It's because every board is different.
Yeah, indeed. All right, Greg, great show. We've done what, 60, 70, 80, almost 100 minutes of football talk here, and we'll do it again next week. What are your thoughts on this Bears-Dolphins game? How ugly is that going to get for the Bears defense?
Well, I wish it was by 35 instead of going to be, might be 60.
I'm going to be at that game, so I'll take the 60.
Well, I know. Well, put it this way: I know the next 3 days are going to be real warm. I didn't look in as far as Sunday, but I know it's not going to be cold.
Mhm.
Their pass offense has got to scare you. They better be ready. They don't run the ball that well, but they better rush the shit out of Tua, because that they got some guys who can fly, and they got. They're 1 and 2 yardage wise, are just about as good as anybody in the league. And Tyreek Hill, who is a bitch to cover, he's number 1 in yardage already.
Mm-hmm. A lot of accolades coming your way, Greg. So I'm going to close the show by saying this. Greg Gabriel, ESPN 2023. I'm going to start.
That's probably not going to happen, but
I'm going to start all these political commercials you see. I'll be posting those on Twitter.
Speaking of that, I'm even getting texts on that now. Are you?
Yes. It's
like
please,
every day I'm getting 4 or 5 political texts.
Oh my gosh, please leave.
It's like, where do they, well, they just got random numbers that they go through and send out the stuff to the area code. My God, that's horrible.
Well, and if you don't have donated to a political party, or if you've done something where you have given up your email, it's going to be sold to all these political organizations, and they're going to torment you for the rest of your life, Greg. So,
change your email.
Indeed.
You watched the Bills-Packers game?
I did, and I was so happy, but disappointed that the score wasn't by a larger margin.
Well, I think Josh played his second half might have been his worst second half all year. He seldom turns the ball over. He had 2 bad interceptions. Very easily could have won that game by 28. That made it a little closer than it was. Important thing is they won. The Packers lost, and officially, I think Rodgers only got sacked 2 or 3 times, but he got the shit kicked out of him again.
He really did. And that's a bad Packer team. And what is surprising to me about the Packers is they've got so much talent on defense, and you're not seeing it in their results. So there's going to be some coaching.
No, they played good last year with pretty much the same guys, and they're not doing it this year. Then their corner, Jair Alexander, he's mouthing off Stephon Diggs, and he said, "I won the matchup." I don't think so. Who won the game?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and who had the long touchdown reception?
Mm-hmm. Yep. That I'm actually going to go to the betting service that I look at and see what are the odds for the Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl, because I truly believe that is the best team in the NFL right now, and one that I see them as almost a shoo-in to get, if they get to the Super Bowl. Of course, Kansas City Chiefs.
Number one, last year they played Kansas City on the road in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Lost the game in overtime, and probably one of the that should have been the Super Bowl. If you watch that game, that was a great game. Mm-hmm. If they get home field advantage in Buffalo in January, they ain't losing.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. They're going to have the weather on their side, and they know how to play in it. Do they win the Super Bowl then? That remains to be seen. But at the same time, they've gotten through the season and they haven't lost anybody key yet, and they're getting back their best corner. They haven't had their best corner since like week 10 last year. Mm-hmm. And Tre'Davious White, he tore an ACL. Okay, he's been practicing the last couple of weeks. He's getting activated tomorrow, I think. He might not play this week, but he's getting activated to the 53 this week, and he'll be, for the stretch, he'll be ready to go, and that'll upgrade. They've been playing with rookies at the corner. or a rookie and a second-year guy, but they've been playing a lot of young guys, and that's going to upgrade the secondary tremendously for them.
Yeah, it's a stacked team, man. Look at how the Buffalo Bills have built this team, and I think Ryan Poles has perhaps been studying it too. So we'll see what happens. And if you want more information on all the latest transactions in the NFL, tune in to Greg and Aldo. Greg and Aldo. It's Dan and Aldo Bear Their Souls. You have to come on our show one night, Greg. Do you do shows at night or nights verboten for you?
No, it just depends what I'm watching on TV or what tape I'm watching.
What are you watching on Tuesday nights generally?
I don't know. There's some show we started watching. It's like 3 or 4 years old. We started watching last night. That's pretty good. It's I don't know what the hell's the name of it. It's on Hulu. Shit, now I can't think of the name of it, but it's done up in Canada.
Oh, okay.
And it's a detective type thing. There's 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. My wife and I just started watching the Alaska something with.
Yeah, my wife watched that. I didn't get into that. The show I liked that she couldn't get into was Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, I've not gotten into.
Oh my God, I love that show, and it's done. They've already. There's going to probably be a movie to finish, to close all the gaps. But as far as having seasons, they're done with it now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got a dog that wants to get out of the room here, Aldo. We're getting out of here now.
All right.
Dog said I've had enough.
Take care, Greg. And for all you other barflies, make sure you check us out tonight on the Dan and Aldo Bear Social. Goodbye, everybody.
See you later.